The sound of the shuttle docking reverberated through the station, a metallic groan that echoed down the pristine corridors of the Galactic Concorde's educational hub. To the untrained ear, it was nothing remarkable, just another transport unloading students, diplomats, and researchers. But to the group of Zalorian professors gathered in the observation lounge, this arrival was anything but ordinary. They watched with a mixture of fascination and trepidation as the shuttle door hissed open, revealing its passengers, the first delegation of Deathworlders to join the intergalactic exchange program. Humans. The species that had single-handedly redefined the galactic lexicon of dangerous. For centuries, their planet, Earth, had been classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, a label reserved for the most hostile environments known to science. It was a place where apex predators prowled, natural disasters struck with alarming frequency, and even the microorganisms seemed to have a vendetta against anything that breathed. Yet, against all odds, humans had not only survived but thrived. They'd built civilizations, developed technology, and eventually reached the stars. And now, here they were, stepping onto the polished floors of the educational hub with easy confidence, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Leading the group was Captain Elena Voss, a woman whose reputation preceded her. She was flanked by two others, Dr. Malik Adebayo, a biologist whose groundbreaking work on adaptive ecosystems had earned him galactic acclaim, and Lieutenant Connor Hayes, a soldier-turned-diplomat with a knack for turning tense situations into cooperative endeavors. But it wasn't the humans themselves that caused the Zalorian professors to exchange uneasy glances. It was what followed them. A low growl rumbled through the air as a massive, wolf-like creature padded down the ramp, its silver fur shimmering under the station's artificial lights. Beside it skittered a six-legged reptilian creature with iridescent scales, its eyes darting around with unnerving intelligence. Perched on Dr. Adebayo's shoulder was a brightly colored bird that let out a sharp, almost mocking caw. The humans' pets had arrived. The Zalorian delegation froze. Pets. Of course, the humans had insisted on bringing their companion animals. It had been a point of contention during the program's negotiations, with the humans arguing that their pets were integral to their culture and well-being. The Galactic Concorde had reluctantly agreed, not fully understanding what that entailed. Now, faced with the reality of Earth's fauna, the professors began to reconsider their decision. Are they safe? Professor Zylar asked, his fronds quivering with anxiety. He was a towering figure, his gelatinous form encased in a translucent exosuit that allowed him to maintain his shape in the station's low-gravity environment. His black eyes fixed on the wolf, which was currently sniffing the air with what appeared to be predatory interest. "Oh, absolutely," Captain Voss replied with a disarming smile. "Luna's a sweetheart. Aren't you, girl?" She scratched the wolf behind the ears, and the massive creature wagged its tail, the motion sending a gust of air through the corridor. Professor Zylar's fronds twitched again. "And the others?" Dr. Adebayo chuckled. "Archimedes here is more interested in puzzles than people." He gestured to the reptilian creature, which was now using its dexterous claws to dismantle a security drone that had wandered too close. "And Kiwi," he tilted his head toward the bird on his shoulder. "Well, she's more bark than bite. Isn't that right, Kiwi?" Kiwi responded with a piercing whistle that caused the professors to flinch. The group proceeded down the corridor, leaving the Zalorians to exchange wary looks before following at a cautious distance. As they entered the main hall, the humans' arrival did not go unnoticed. Representatives from dozens of species turned to stare, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright alarm. Conversations hushed, and the gentle hum of the station seemed to amplify the humans' every step. Captain Voss ignored the stares, her focus on the figure approaching from the far end of the hall. High Chancellor Velrix, a member of the Avorian species, exuded an aura of calm authority. His feathered crest and elongated limbs gave him an almost regal appearance, and his piercing yellow eyes assessed the humans and their companions with a practiced neutrality. "Welcome to the Galactic Concorde Educational Hub," Velrix said, his voice smooth and measured. "We are honored to host the first Deathworlder delegation. I trust your journey was uneventful." "Uneventful and smooth, Chancellor," Voss replied. "We're grateful for the opportunity to participate in this exchange." Velrix's gaze shifted to the animals. And these are our companions, Voss said. Luna, Archimedes, and Kiwi. They're here to provide emotional support and assist in our research. Velrix's feathers ruffled slightly, a subtle sign of unease. I see. I trust they will remain under control? Absolutely, Voss assured him. They're highly trained. The Chancellor nodded, though his expression suggested he remained unconvinced. He gestured for the delegation to follow him, leading them to a spacious auditorium where students and faculty had gathered for the official welcome ceremony. As they entered, a murmur spread through the crowd. The humans' presence was already an anomaly, but their animals seemed to steal the spotlight. Taking their seats near the front, the humans exchanged subtle glances. They were used to being the center of attention, but even they could feel the tension in the room. It was as if every eye was trained not on them, but on their companions. Kiwi, oblivious to the scrutiny, began preening her feathers, while Archimedes settled into a crouch, its tail twitching rhythmically. Luna lay down beside Captain Voss, her head resting on her paws as she surveyed the room with calm detachment. The ceremony began with a series of speeches, each more floried than the last. Delegates from various species extolled the virtues of intergalactic cooperation, emphasizing the importance of understanding and tolerance. But despite the lofty rhetoric, the undercurrent of unease was palpable. The humans' reputation preceded them, and their animals only added another layer of unpredictability. Finally, it was Captain Voss's turn to speak. She rose from her seat and approached the podium, her confident stride silencing the murmurs. Thank you, Chancellor Velrix, esteemed delegates, and students, she began. It's an honor to stand here as a representative of humanity. We come from a world that many of you consider harsh, even deadly. And yes, Earth is a challenging place. But it's also a place of incredible beauty, resilience, and adaptability. Our journey to the stars has been shaped by those challenges, and we've brought a piece of that journey with us. She gestured toward Luna, Archimedes, and Kiwi. Our companions are not just animals, they are partners. They remind us of where we come from and inspire us to reach for what lies ahead. We hope their presence here will not only help us share our culture but also demonstrate the unique bonds that can form between species, even on a death world. The room was silent for a moment before a smattering of polite applause began. It was not the enthusiastic reception Voss had hoped for, but it was a start. As she returned to her seat, Velrix leaned over and whispered, an intriguing perspective, Captain. I'm curious to see how it unfolds. So are we, Voss replied with a smile. The ceremony concluded without incident, and the delegates were escorted to their quarters. But as the humans settled in, it became clear that their arrival had sparked more than just curiosity. Rumors began to spread through the station, each more exaggerated than the last. By the time morning arrived, Luna was reputed to be a genetically engineered predator, Archimedes a living weapon, and Kiwi an avian spy. The humans found themselves at the center of a swirling storm of speculation, their every move scrutinized by the station's inhabitants. The first day of classes only added fuel to the fire. The humans were scheduled to attend a biology seminar led by Professor Zylar, who had spent the night meticulously preparing his lecture. He greeted the class with his usual formality, his fronds arranged in a neat pattern that signaled professional detachment. Today, he began, we will explore the concept of ecological symbiosis. It is a phenomenon observed across the galaxy, where two or more species form mutually beneficial relationships. Our guest delegates from Earth have graciously agreed to share insights from their unique biosphere. Voss nodded and stepped forward, accompanied by Luna. The wolf's presence immediately drew a collective intake of breath from the students, who leaned back in their seats as if distance could protect them. Thank you, Professor, Voss said. Earth is home to countless examples of symbiosis. One of the most remarkable is the relationship between humans and canines. Luna here is a descendant of wolves that, thousands of years ago, formed a bond with early humans. Together, we hunted, protected each other, and built a partnership that has lasted to this day. As she spoke, Luna sat calmly beside her, exuding an air of regal dignity. But when a student in the back muttered something about predators, the wolf's ears twitched, and she turned her gaze in their direction. The student froze, their fronds stiffening in alarm. "She's just curious," Voss said with a reassuring smile. "Wolves are highly perceptive. They can read emotions and respond accordingly. Luna's not a threat. She's a friend." The student didn't look convinced, but they nodded nonetheless. Voss continued her explanation, delving into the history of domestication and the unique traits that had made canines such invaluable companions. As she spoke, Luna lay down, her presence a silent testament to the bond Voss described. Meanwhile, Dr. Adebayo introduced Archimedes, who had spent the lecture's first half dismantling a classroom display. "Don't worry," Adebayo said with a grin. "He'll put it back together. Probably better than it was before." Sure enough, the reptilian creature began reassembling the pieces, its claws moving with mechanical precision. Kiwi, for her part, decided to explore the classroom, hopping from desk to desk and chirping loudly whenever she encountered something shiny. The students watched in a mixture of fear and fascination, their initial apprehension slowly giving way to curiosity. By the end of the seminar, a brave Zalorian student had even mustered the courage to approach Luna, who sniffed their outstretched frond before giving it a gentle lick. It was a small victory, but an important one. The humans knew they had a long way to go to earn the trust of their peers. But as they left the classroom, the spark of understanding in the students' eyes gave them hope. The journey had just begun, and they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The station's artificial night cycle had barely begun when the first problem arose. It started with a low, keening sound that echoed through the human delegation's quarters, followed by a series of thuds and clatters. Captain Elena Voss groaned and threw an arm over her eyes, trying to ignore the noise. But when it escalated into a crash that shook the walls, she bolted upright. "What now?" she muttered, throwing on her jacket and stepping into the hallway. The sight that greeted her was both alarming and absurd. Archimedes, the reptilian creature, had somehow managed to access a maintenance panel and was halfway inside it, his claws sparking against exposed wires. Sparks flew, casting erratic shadows across the corridor. "Archimedes, no! Get out of there," she shouted, rushing forward. The reptilian froze, tilting its head in an almost comical expression of innocence before reluctantly backing out. Behind her, Lieutenant Connor Hayes emerged from his room, rubbing his eyes and holding a plasma rifle loosely at his side. "What's going on?" he asked groggily. "Your genius lizard decided to rewire the station," Voss snapped, pointing at Archimedes, who now sat looking smug. "I told Adebayo this thing needs supervision." "You rang," came Dr. Malik Adebayo's voice as he appeared from the adjacent corridor, holding a tablet that displayed a holographic schematic of the station's systems. Kiwi perched on his shoulder, her feathers ruffled from the commotion. "What did he do this time?" "He's been playing electrician," Voss said dryly. "I'm pretty sure he just caused a power fluctuation on Deck 3. Adebayo said, crouching to inspect the panel. "Looks like he's trying to bypass a redundant circuit. Interesting. Must have found the original configuration inefficient." "Interesting?" Voss repeated incredulously. "It's sabotage. If the Zalorians find out." Her words were cut off by a sudden wail of alarms. The corridor lights flickered and then turned an ominous red as an automated voice announced, "Containment breach detected in the xenobiology wing. All personnel, please evacuate immediately." The three humans froze, their eyes meeting in mutual alarm. Without another word, they sprinted toward the source of the alarm, Luna bounding alongside them. The wolf's ears were pinned back, her keen senses picking up on the tension in the air. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Zalorian security personnel were attempting to seal off the wing, their fronds trembling as they worked their control panels. Inside the containment zone, something massive and shadowy thrashed against the reinforced glass of its enclosure. "What are we looking at?" Voss demanded, skidding to a halt beside a Zalorian officer. "Specimen 17 has escaped its secondary containment field," the officer replied, his voice high-pitched and strained. "We are attempting to neutralize the threat, but it is resistant to all known sedatives." Voss's stomach sank. Specimen 17 was infamous even among the station's diverse collection of alien creatures. A hyperadaptive predator from a Class 10 death world, It was deemed too dangerous for direct study and had been kept in isolation. Now, it was loose. What triggered the breach? Adebayo asked, his voice sharp. We're still investigating, the officer replied. But there's no time for analysis. If it escapes into the station's main corridors, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The consequences were obvious. As if on cue, Specimen 17 rammed the glass again, creating a spiderweb of cracks. The creature's form was still indistinct, its adaptive camouflage blending seamlessly with its surroundings. All that was visible were its glowing eyes and the sharp, metallic sheen of its claws. We can't let it get out, Voss said, her voice resolute. She turned to Hayes. You got any non-lethal rounds on you? Always, Hayes replied, loading his rifle. But non-lethal isn't gonna stop that thing for long. It doesn't have to, Voss said. Just long enough for us to figure out a way to contain it. Before they could act, Archimedes darted forward, skittering toward the control panel nearest the enclosure. Archimedes, no! Adebayo shouted, but the reptilian ignored him, its claws flying over the controls. The lights in the containment wing flickered again, and a low hum filled the air as the secondary containment field reactivated. The shimmering barrier formed around Specimen 17, forcing it back into the center of its enclosure. What did he just do? Voss asked, staring in disbelief. Adebayo grinned, a mixture of pride and relief. Looks like he bypassed the damaged circuits and rerouted power to the containment field. Clever little guy. You mean to tell me your pet lizard just saved us from a station-wide catastrophe? Hayes said, his tone equal parts incredulous and amused. Seems that way, Adebayo replied, scooping up Archimedes, who chirped triumphantly. The Zalorian officer approached them, his fronds twitching in what could only be described as confusion. Your companion has just demonstrated a level of intelligence that rivals our own engineers. How is this possible? Earth, Voss said simply, as if that explained everything. And in a way, it did. The situation seemed under control, but the incident had only heightened the station's unease about the humans and their companions. Whispers spread through the corridors, growing more outlandish with each retelling. By the next morning, Luna was rumored to have single-handedly subdued Specimen 17, while Kiwi was said to have orchestrated the entire containment breach as part of an elaborate test of the station's defenses. The humans tried to go about their day as usual, attending lectures and participating in group discussions. But the tension was palpable. Students and faculty gave them a wide berth, their curiosity overshadowed by fear. Even the Zalorian professors, who prided themselves on their open-mindedness, seemed reluctant to engage with them directly. The breaking point came during a joint seminar on interspecies cooperation. The topic was meant to foster understanding and collaboration, but it quickly devolved into a thinly veiled interrogation. Captain Voss, a student from the crystalline Quarak species, began, their voice a melodic chime. Given the events of last night, how can we be certain that your companions are not a threat to the station's safety? Voss took a steadying breath, her gaze sweeping the room. I understand your concerns, she said. But I'd like to point out that it was Archimedes who prevented a potential disaster. If he hadn't acted, Specimen 17 might still be loose. And what if he hadn't acted correctly? Another student challenged. What if his interference had made the situation worse? He's trained for scenarios like this, Adebayo interjected. Earth's ecosystems demand adaptability and quick thinking. Archimedes isn't just a pet, he's a partner. The room buzzed with murmurs, skepticism evident in every tone. It was clear that words alone wouldn't be enough to sway their audience. The humans needed to prove themselves and their companions once and for all. That opportunity came sooner than expected. During a routine tour of the station's botanical gardens, an alarm blared through the intercom. Structural breach detected in the arboreal research wing. Evacuate immediately. Voss exchanged a look with her team. We're not running this time, she said. We're going to fix this. Together, they sprinted toward the source of the alarm, their companions close behind. This time, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove that humans and their so-called pets were more than the galaxy's latest curiosity. They were a force to be reckoned with. The arboreal research wing was a marvel of engineering and biology, a sprawling greenhouse that mimicked dozens of planetary ecosystems. Its centerpiece was the unity tree, a massive, bioluminescent organism engineered from the genetic material of multiple species. Normally, the wing was a serene haven of scientific discovery. But as the humans approached, they found it in chaos. Thick vines snaked across the floor, moving with an unnatural, almost predatory intent. Researchers and security personnel were trapped behind hastily erected barriers, their faces pale with fear. In the center of the room, a massive breach in the unity tree's trunk leaked glowing sap that pooled like molten silver on the ground. Hovering over the tree was the source of the disturbance, a swarm of insectoid creatures, each the size of a human head, their translucent wings buzzing with a sound that set teeth on edge. "What the hell are those?" Lieutenant Connor Hayes muttered, raising his plasma rifle. "Xylarian root wasps," Dr. Malik Adebayo replied grimly, his eyes scanning the scene. "They're symbiotic pollinators for the unity tree, but they're supposed to stay dormant unless the tree's ecosystem is severely disrupted." "Disrupted how?" Captain Elena Voss asked, her tone sharp. "Oh, I don't know," Adebayo said, gesturing at the massive breach in the tree. "Maybe someone or something decided to play lumberjack." Kiwi, perched on Adebayo's shoulder, let out a series of sharp squawks that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Voss ignored the bird and turned to the Zalorian security chief, who was cowering behind a console. "What happened?" she demanded. The security chief's fronds quivered. We don't know. The tree's containment protocols failed, and then the wasps woke up. They've been attacking anyone who gets too close." "Attacking with what?" Hayes asked. As if in answer, one of the wasps dove toward a fleeing researcher, its stinger glowing with a sickly green light. The researcher screamed as the stinger made contact, collapsing to the ground in convulsions. "Neurotoxin," Adebayo said grimly. "Fast-acting and lethal without treatment. We've got to contain this now." "Suggestions?" Voss asked, her mind racing. "We need to repair the breach in the tree," Adebayo said. "It's the only way to calm the wasps. But we'll never get close with them swarming like that." "What about Luna?" Hayes said, glancing at the wolf, who stood beside Voss, her ears pinned back and her hackles raised. Voss hesitated. "What about her?" "She could lure the wasps away," Hayes suggested. "Give us a clear shot at the breach." "Are you out of your mind?" Adebayo snapped. "Those things would tear her apart." "Not if she's fast enough," Hayes countered. "And Luna's the fastest thing we've got." Voss knelt beside Luna, meeting the wolf's intelligent gaze. "What do you think, girl? Can you do it?" Luna let out a low, rumbling growl, her tail flicking with determination. Voss's chest tightened, but she nodded. "All right. Let's do this." Hayes rigged a small device to Luna's harness, a beacon that emitted a high-pitched frequency designed to attract the wasps. As soon as it was activated, the swarm's attention shifted. Hundreds of glowing eyes fixed on Luna, and the air filled with the deafening buzz of their wings. "Go, Luna!" Voss shouted. The wolf bolted, her powerful legs propelling her across the room in a blur of silver fur. The wasps pursued her, their formation tightening into a deadly vortex. Luna weaved through the arboretum with agility born of countless hunts, leaping over barriers and dodging the snapping vines that reached for her. "That's our opening," Voss said. "Adebayo, get to the breach. Hayes, cover him. I'll keep an eye on Luna." They moved as a unit, each step choreographed through years of training. Adebayo reached the base of the unity tree and began deploying a biopolymer patch from his field kit. The material spread across the breach like liquid glass, hardening on contact. Hayes fired his rifle in controlled bursts, keeping the few straggling wasps at bay. One of them got too close, its stinger aimed at Adebayo, but Kiwi swooped down from above, pecking at the creature's wings and sending it spiraling to the ground. "Good bird," Adebayo muttered, not looking up from his work. Meanwhile, Voss tracked Luna's movements, her heart pounding with every leap and dodge. The wolf was holding her own, but the swarm was relentless, and Voss knew she couldn't keep this up forever. "How much longer, Adebayo?" she called. "Almost there," he replied, his hands moving with practiced precision. A sudden yelp from Luna drew Voss's attention. One of the wasps had grazed her flank, leaving a trail of glowing venom. The wolf stumbled but kept running, her determination unshaken. Voss's chest tightened with a mix of fear and pride. "Hurry, Malik," she urged. "Done," Adebayo shouted, stepping back from the tree. The biopolymer patch glowed briefly before fading, indicating a successful seal. The effect was immediate. The wasps' buzzing faltered, and their erratic movements slowed. One by one, they began to return to the unity tree, their stingers retracting as they resumed their dormant state. Luna collapsed near the edge of the room, her sides heaving. Voss was at her side in an instant, checking the wound. The venom's glow was already fading, neutralized by the wolf's robust physiology. "You did good, girl," Voss whispered, stroking Luna's fur. "You did real good." The aftermath was a whirlwind of activity. Researchers scrambled to assess the damage, while Zalorian engineers worked to reinforce the Unity Tree's containment protocols. The humans, however, were given a wide berth. Despite their role in resolving the crisis, the other species couldn't seem to decide whether they were saviors or harbingers of chaos. High Chancellor Velrix arrived shortly after, his feathered crest flaring with agitation. "Captain Voss," he said, his voice tight. "I must commend your team's swift action, but this incident raises serious questions about the presence of your companions." "With all due respect, Chancellor," Voss replied, her tone steady, "if it weren't for our companions, this incident could have been catastrophic. Luna, Archimedes, and Kiwi are part of our team. They're not just pets, they're partners." Velrix's yellow eyes studied her for a long moment before he nodded. "Very well. But understand this, the Galactic Concord values order above all else. If your presence disrupts that order again, there will be consequences." "Understood," Voss said, meeting his gaze. As the Chancellor departed, Hayes let out a low whistle. "Well, that could have gone worse. Could have gone better, too," Adebayo muttered, scratching Archimedes under the chin. The reptilian chirped contentedly, oblivious to the tension. Voss looked down at Luna, who was now resting peacefully. "We're not here to make friends," she said quietly. "We're here to prove that humanity belongs in this galaxy. And we're not going to stop until we do." The station's artificial morning cycle began with a soft golden glow, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous days. Captain Elena Voss stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars. Her reflection in the glass showed the fatigue etched into her features, but there was also a flicker of quiet resolve. Behind her, the faint hum of activity signaled that life on the station was returning to normal, or at least as normal as it could be with humanity's delegation at its heart. Luna lay at her feet, her wound neatly bandaged and her tail thumping softly against the floor. Archimedes perched on a nearby console, his clawed hands deftly dismantling and reassembling a communication device. Kiwi fluttered between them, chirping occasionally as if offering commentary. Voss couldn't help but smile at the odd little family they'd become. The quiet moment was interrupted by the arrival of High Chancellor Velrix. His feathered crest was lowered in what Voss had come to recognize as a gesture of contemplation. He approached without his usual retinue, a sign that this was not an official visit. "Captain Voss," Velrix began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "May I join you?" Voss gestured to the seat across from her. "Of course, Chancellor. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Velrix settled into the chair, his elongated limbs folding neatly. For a moment, he simply watched the stars, as if searching for the right words. "The events of the past days have given me much to consider," he said finally. "Your presence here has been disruptive, but also enlightening." Voss raised an eyebrow. "Enlightening?" Velrix's yellow eyes met hers. "Your team and your companions have demonstrated qualities that many in the Galactic Concord find difficult to understand. Resilience, adaptability, and a willingness to act in the face of uncertainty. These traits are not unique to humans, but the way you embody them is distinctive. Earth has a way of shaping its people," Voss replied. "It's not an easy world to live on, but it's taught us to face challenges head-on. And it's taught us the value of connection, whether it's with our own species or with others. She glanced down at Luna, who gazed back with quiet understanding. Velrix followed her gaze. Your companions are a testament to that connection. When we first learned of humanity's bonds with other species, many of us dismissed it as primitive sentimentality. But I see now that it is something far more profound. It is a strength, not a weakness. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that they were standing on the precipice of something new. Finally, Velrix rose. The Galactic Council will convene later today to discuss the continuation of the interspecies exchange program. I will advocate for your delegation to remain. I believe there is much we can learn from each other. Voss stood as well, extending a hand. Velrix hesitated for only a moment before grasping it with one of his slender digits. Thank you, Chancellor. I won't let you down. As Velrix departed, Voss turned back to the stars, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her bones. This was more than a victory for her team, it was a step forward for humanity's place in the galaxy. The day's proceedings unfolded smoothly. The Council's deliberations were thorough but ultimately favorable. Humanity's role in the program was secure, and the tensions that had once defined their presence began to ease. By evening, the station was abuzz with the tentative beginnings of camaraderie. Researchers from various species approached the humans, not with fear but with curiosity. Even Luna, Archimedes, and Kiwi found themselves at the center of fascination, their antics sparking laughter and breaking down barriers. In the days that followed, the humans and their companions became integral members of the station's community. Voss and her team continued to face challenges, but they met each one with the same determination that had brought them this far. Slowly but surely, they earned the respect and trust of their peers. One evening, as Voss walked through the arboretum, now fully repaired and thriving, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. She thought of the crises they'd faced, the lives they'd saved, and the bonds they'd forged. Above all, she thought of the lesson they'd taught the galaxy, that strength and resilience were not measured by power alone, but by the connections one formed and the courage to protect them. As she sat beneath the unity tree, its bioluminescent leaves casting a gentle glow, Luna rested her head in her lap, Archimedes curled up nearby, and Kiwi perched on a low branch. For the first time in what felt like forever, Voss allowed herself to relax. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges, but it was also filled with possibilities. And humanity was ready to meet them all. The moral of their journey was clear: unity was not about erasing differences but embracing them. By standing together, even the most disparate beings could create something extraordinary. Humanity's place among the stars was not guaranteed by strength alone but by their willingness to connect, adapt, and persevere. And as Voss looked up at the shimmering leaves of the unity tree, she knew that this was only the beginning.